Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Eric B. Dent, and I serve as the Uncommon Friends Endowed Chair, Professor of Ethics. And on behalf of the Newton Ethical Leadership Initiative and the FGCU Eagles for Liberty, it's my privilege to welcome you all to the 5th Annual Distinguished Speech in Ethics. And Congressman, normally this room would be a dinner time, and this room would be packed. And believe it or not, based on our registrations and counting all the people in here, this is a standing room only crowd for what we're allowed to have under current times. And we're being joined by many people on the video stream up there. So our total audience includes all the people that are watching at a distance. The only people that can be here in person right now are those who are members of the FGCU community. So welcome to everybody. We're able to host great events like this through the visionary leadership of individuals who made contributions to support both this event and everything that we do throughout the year to foster ethics both on campus and in the community. And in particular, I'd like to thank a few of those individuals who are not members of the FGC community, so they're watching on the live stream, but Bob and Linda Taylor, thank you so much for what you've done for this endowment, and Brian and Kim Rist also, thank you. We really appreciate it. So it's their generosity that's allowed events like this and a meal that we'll get to enjoy afterwards. Let me just take a moment and talk about the ethics program at Florida Gulf Coast University, of which this speaking event is a part. Really, there's a two-pronged focus to what we are doing. When most people think about ethics, they normally think about breaches of ethics. You know, when people have done something wrong, you know, with Lori Loughlin having to go to prison for her behavior and so forth. And for decades, people taught, both on campus and in corporate training, they taught ethics to avoid those sorts of things. You know, the focus was on not getting into trouble, not doing what you're not supposed to, don't get your name in the paper and all those sort of things. And actually the research showed that that wasn't terribly effective at enhancing people's ethics. So more recent research has shown that one difference that does increase people's ethical behavior is if we teach positive ethics. So that's what we do here on campus. And by positive ethics, what I mean is developing character and integrity and fostering virtues. And those human virtues have been around as long as people have. Aristotle wrote a bunch down many, many years ago, and they would include selflessness, but combined with proper ambition. They would include honesty, kindness, and generosity. And all of those virtues are nonpartisan. And the Newton Ethical Leadership Initiative is a nonpartisan program, even though today we have a speaker associated with one political party. But those of you who've been following the speaker series know that last year I had invited a prominent politician from a different political party, and she had accepted that invitation, but and we had started promoting the event, but she had to withdraw. But I first heard the name Byron Donalds last year, probably like many people did, as we were going over all of the candidates for the various offices that were being elected. And I came to learn a little bit about his story and about his mother, who embodied those virtues that I just talked about, that she was very selfless in raising her son, she had a good work ethic herself and instilled that in him. And so it was his work in embodying those virtues that have allowed him to hold the prominent position that he does today. The second part of our ethics curriculum is a body of work called Giving Voice to Values. And that came out of Harvard University. And it's really about developing courage, because many situations in which we find the possibility of something unethical or something wrong tempting us, it's coming from a place of a lot of pressure. It might be coming from a boss. It might be coming from a best friend. It might be coming from a romantic partner or a quota. So we have got to be able to have the courage to speak up. And not only do we have to learn to speak up, but we have to speak up successfully. If we try to speak up in a situation, let's say it's with our boss, and it's unsuccessful, that's going to diminish our courage over time. So I tell my students that being able to speak up is kind of like developing a physical muscle. Many people start off with a flabby physical muscle, and the way to grow that is you start out with 10-pound weights, right? You don't lift 150-pound dumbbells right off the bat. So it's the same with learning how to speak up. You do it in small situations where it's not as risky. You get successful in those situations, and then you build your muscle from there. So and I apologize, my phone is yuck. We teach our students that everyone is bestowed with human dignity, and so that everybody's voice is important. Everybody's voice is valuable. And sometimes when people use their voice, it come across in expressions that we don't find very helpful. Sometimes it might even be hateful, but we do know from centuries of human experience that if we're going to win people over, if we're going to be successful, we have got to allow them to give their voice, because if we take any steps at all to silence them, or if we cancel them, there's no way we're going to win them over, right? Those are just modern versions of playground bullying behavior. So those are the two cornerstones to our ethics program. We have a number of other things we do, high school ethics case competitions, and sending our college students to nationwide collegiate competitions. And so we're just very pleased to have this distinguished speech be a part of what we do, both on campus and throughout the community. So without further ado, let me invite Marcelo Dorio to come up. He's the treasurer for the FGCU Eagles for Liberty, and he'll introduce our speaker this morning.
Good morning, everyone. So Byron Donald grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and as Dr. Dent noted on, is a proud son of a hardworking and loving single mother. His mother dedicated all her time instilling in him that greatness requires sacrifice, which drives him as a devoted family man and United States Congressman. Byron is a graduate of Florida State University and received a Bachelor of Arts degree in Finance and Marketing. His career led him to Southwest Florida, where he worked in the banking, insurance, and marketing industry. Elected to the Florida House of Representatives in 2016, Byron represented Hendry County and East Collier County in the state capitol. During his tenure at the Florida House, Byron served as the pre-K to 12 Quality Subcommittee Chair during the 2018 and 19 legislative session, and served as the Insurance and Banking Subcommittee Chair in the 2019 and 2020 legislative session. While serving in the Florida House, he primarily focused on elder affairs, criminal justice reform, and ensured that each child has access to a world-class education. Byron ran for and won the Republican nomination for Florida's 19th congressional district this past August. He's committed to serving and giving back to the community that gave him so much. Byron continues to volunteer in his church as a youth leader and mentor, and also volunteers as a youth football and basketball coach. He lives in Naples, Florida with his wife, Erica, and their 3 sons, Damon, Darren, and Mason. Byron has spent his entire adult life serving others, whether it be through volunteering, business, or leadership. He is committed to representing Florida's 19th congressional district's values in Washington, D.C. to ensure a stronger Florida and a stronger nation. Without further ado, Mr. Byron Donald.
Hearing bios gets you all choked up, you know. Everybody relax. It's okay. We're gonna have a little bit of fun today. Well, that's loud. Okay. First of all, thanks for everybody for coming. Everybody at home or on your computers or in your car, wherever you're zooming in. Thanks for joining. It's really an honor to be here. You know, actually, I typically don't write speeches anymore. I kind of just talk about what's kind of on my mind, the things I think are important. And so, you know, when I was in the back earlier, I was kind of going through, I was actually looking at the flyer for this event. And I said, you know what, let's actually talk about the actual ethics of conservatism. I came to politics 12 years ago. I didn't come into politics because my family or because, you know, I wanted to be elected. I actually got into politics because of the financial collapse going on in 2008. I was working in my career in insurance. At the time, I was managing a $4 billion insurance portfolio, and we had clients who were overseas. And so they really had no context for what was happening in our financial markets here in the United States during that time. So of course, you know, I'm the guy with a finance degree, and I worked in commercial banking, and I'd done economic reports when I was in banking. So the owners of my company came to me and said, we need you to research what's going on, figure this out so we can go and contact our clients to keep them calm about what's going to happen in the United States. And so I did, and I started doing research, started doing my own just deep dive, really trying to put the tutelage and the knowledge I had from my career and from college and put it to good use to try to find out actually what's happening, what are the causes, what does it mean for our business. For those of you familiar with SWOT analysis, essentially what we're doing. What are the opportunities? What are the threats? What are the real concerns? Is the investment at risk? So on and so forth. During that process, there was a committee hearing actually for the House Financial Services Committee that was going on. I believe it happened right before Lehman Brothers fell, either before or after Lehman Brothers. Some of you guys were too young. You're like, what's Lehman Brothers? But that's okay. But it was around that time. And I watched the committee. After about an hour of watching it, I was upset. Frankly, I was pissed because I was just like, who are these people that are supposed to be running the country? How come they don't know anything? Why is it that I know more than they know? And I'm only 29 years old. That's what got me into politics. The road to conservatism was actually much deeper and much broader. You see, I don't really like cable news. I never really have. Sorry, guys at Fox. You know, I go on Fox a lot. But I didn't like it because everything was sound bites. Everything was very surface level. And I get it. You can't really get into a deep dive in modern cable news because there's so many things they're trying to cover at such a rapid speed that it's difficult to actually dig into some of these issues. And so I started watching cable news because the committee hearing kind of had me upset and I just wanted to know more. I started just becoming inquisitive. And then I started reading about political philosophy. And the first book I ever read was called The Law by Frederick Bastiat. And the book is not very long. It might be 100 pages. But Bastiat was a French philosopher from France around 1850. And he wrote about what was happening in French government right before the French Revolution. And what Bastiat hypothesized in his writings was that the purpose of law is not to favor one interest over the other. It is not to, quote unquote, create the society you wish to see in the mind's eye of whoever happens to be in charge. The purpose of law is to be simple and plain for all to understand, so that then human beings can organize their lives essentially on the same playing field. And what happened in France is that you had politicians, for lack of a better phrase, were tilting the law to favor one interest over another. And what it actually did is it exacerbated the people. And if you know the history of the French Revolution, you know what happened after that. And so the writings of Bastiat actually really spoke to me on a much more profound basis than just modern cable news, right versus left, conservative versus liberal, Republican versus Democrat. Because I really wanted to get a foundational understanding of not just politics, but the way, frankly, human beings organize society. Like, how is it that people from different backgrounds, different ideas can actually live together in harmony and peace while having wildly different views of what life should be about, while having very different and distinct views on religion, children, money, the environment, whatever the case might be. But how do we all come together and still have a society where we literally can be interdependent of each other without relying on each other? So I went on to read the Second Treatise of Government. I've read Locke, I've read Montesquieu. I tried to read a Democracy in America. It's just very, very long, very long. Maybe I'll get to it. No, I'm probably not going to get to it. If they put Democracy in America on Audible, I might listen to it. And then from there, that was actually my pathway to conservatism. What I realized is that if you really look back at human history, let's take a step back from American government and American history for a moment. If you take a step back and you actually examine world history, the only time at any point in the history of the world, no matter what society or government you're talking about, the only time where people literally had the ability to change their stripes in life, to actually grow and become more than what their parents were, that had a real ability to seek their interests, is when you had a government that was focused on largely limited powers, limited authority, that had a strong respect, not just for rule of law, but for individual liberty. You see, individual liberty is the construct upon which all of this is built. It is not built, in my view, it is not built by executive orders or top-down thinking or Byzantine Rube Goldberg style legislation that tries to fit everybody into a particular box and tries to organize everybody's steps for the sake of providing equity. And I will say equity is actually a dangerous ideal. And I'll explain the difference between equity and equality in a moment. But this push and this thought process that we have to organize society in a way so all people achieve all outcomes or similar outcomes is a very dangerous gamble. And the reason why I believe it's dangerous is because as human beings, we already know in our own lives how hard it is to organize ourselves. What makes us think we're smart enough to organize somebody else's? I have 3 sons. I can't organize their life, and they're my sons. And I know their thought process intimately. I can tell when they come into my house, whether they're happy, whether they're upset, whether they're resentful. I can see that just by looking at their face. I don't even have to talk to them. And yet and still, I don't have enough raw intelligence unto myself to be able to perfectly craft and organize their lives. If I have that base understanding today, what makes me think that I'm smart enough to do it for all of you? I don't even know you. We just met, some of you. And that's the basic philosophy upon which I look at public policy and I look at the rule of law. So to take a step back from that, the ethics of government, the ethics of conservatism, is a healthy respect for the individuality. Let me slow it down. For all people, no matter who you are. It is an understanding that the only thing that provides equality for us all is an adherence to a simple and clear rule of law that all follow. Now, if you choose not to follow the law, that's your own business, and you got to pay the price for that. We all do that in our own lives, whether it's ironed criminal law or whether it's just the laws of moral conscience and good order. If you violate them in your own personal life, there's a price to be paid. I tell my sons all the time, we all have to deal with the consequences of our actions. We all do. Just a matter of time, place, opportunity, and when the price must be paid. But everything that is done in life requires a penance. Everything requires a sacrifice. But knowing all of this, it is not proper for me or people in my position as being elected officials to substitute my decision-making for yours. Because in my opinion, that is not ethical, that is controlling. And that's controlling without having an understanding of what even makes you tick, who you are, What do you want to do? For the ladies, do you want your hair to be blonde, brunette, red? I don't know, long, short? You want to put a bob in it? You want to go get some extensions down the street? I don't know those things. I can't know those things. So whether it's healthcare, immigration, tax policy, whatever the case might be, the real purpose, hold on a second. I got a spam call, things buzzing my arm. Anybody sick of spam calls? You can be honest, you can talk. This is gonna be much more interactive because I'm almost done speaking now. And then we're gonna just have questions. But going back to it, the true ethics of conservatism, in my view, is that healthy respect. It's a healthy respect for disagreement. You know, I know we're going through this time period. I'm gonna be a little partisan, but we're going through this time period where if you were a supporter of the President Trump, not President Biden, and you were highly expressive in that thought, that now you're to be canceled or shunned or removed from the public square, so to speak. I think that's as dangerous as what happened on January 6th. And I was on the floor on January 6th. I was there. I think it is just as dangerous as what happened on January 6th. Because just like violence should never be tolerated in any way, shape, or form, removing the ability of individuals to express themselves, even if you vehemently disagree with their viewpoints, even if you believe that they are the worst thoughts in all of humanity, the removing of their ability to share those thoughts is dangerous. Because this goes back to, again, the actual ethics of not just conservatism, but the basis of natural law. If I have the authority to remove your ability to share your thoughts, and I have the ability to remove just about anything, if we allow, or if we stand idly by and say it is okay for not government, but a cartel, for lack of a better phrase, of organizations to silence somebody we deem to be quote unquote dangerous, then what can't they do? And I think this is something where, you know, the political left has to be very, very careful, because some of their accusations, I think, of people are the right, they're actually imitating the accusations that they hurl. You see, the right to free speech is not something that was really ingrained in American society. That you actually have to go back to the time of the true, full, and a lot of times brutal tyranny of the monarchies of Europe. You see, our Constitution, the foundations of it are found in Magna Carta. Going as far back as Magna Carta, where you had people actually rise up in open rebellion against the crown, not to become king, but to have a modicum of respect for their lives in balance with the king. So these battles for liberty have been fought far before America. And I think sometimes what gets lost when you do these 1776 projects or these 1619 projects, I think people should go back to 1215. Because if you go back to 1215 and you really examine world history and really the principles and the fights and the battles around liberty, I think it would actually provide the proper perspective for us in America today. That these battles for individuality and, yes, freedom, and more important, liberty, have been waged and fought for centuries. Because at the end of the day, we're all people, we're all different, and we just want to be free. And most of the time, we just want to be left alone. So I'm gonna stop there. I know people have questions. I like questions, and I could talk forever, and that's boring. You know, I don't want to do that to you guys, but I definitely would love to, you know, answer any questions that you have and really just kind of expound on some of the thoughts I have, or even if there's other things you wanted to expound on, I could do that as well. Yeah, sure.
Since it is being live streamed, where Shelley's there, she's going to come around with the microphone. So if you'd like to ask a question, that way the live stream audience will be able to hear it as well. So just wait till she gets over to you. And Congressman Donalds is going to do a lot of press conferences while he's serving. Today's not a press conference, So if you have questions that fit his remarks, that would be more appropriate than, press conference type questions. So
there's a question, does the right to share your thoughts include storming the legislature with the intent to harm elected officials?
Great question. No. You see, the very concept of liberty is important. And, to the person asking the question, let me lay it out this way. The way I was taught about it is we think that, oh, this is America. We're the land of the free. No, we do not have pure freedom. Pure freedom allows for the question. We do not have pure freedom. What we have is a construct of individual liberty. And what liberty is in a sense is, I am free to choose to do and to act as long as I do not cause harm to another in the process. In short, the freedom of my fist is limited by the proximity of your face. That is the construct of liberty. So what happened on the 6th is not a matter of liberty. It's not even a matter of morality. You cannot, I'm gonna expound on this a little bit. You do not have, not just the legal authority, you do not have the moral authority under natural law to bring harm to another individual. These are basic things that we teach our kids as they're growing up. Keep your hands to yourself. You're not allowed to, we do this all the time. And so, on the events of the 6th, I was very quick to condemn it because I was there. Because I think one thing that people don't really understand, yeah, Republicans and Democrats, we fight and we argue, we bicker, we talk about each other, we're putting out mean tweets, all kind of stuff. We're doing all that stuff, right? When the Capitol was breached, actually when the House floor was about to be breached, there was no more Republican and Democrat. You had members of Congress and you had staff and you had Capitol Police. And we were all looking out for each other. This is what the media won't tell you. Nobody wants to talk about that because it's not saucy. It don't sell, okay? But on the floor, when they were banging at the doors of the House, the same doors that the president comes through to give the State of the Union, when they were banging on those doors, the number one thought I think everybody had was, oh my God. And the secondary thought so many of us had was, how do we protect each other and get out of here safely? There's a lot of elderly members in Washington. I mean, yeah, some of them are old, And so, I mean, look, I'm 6'3", 285, okay? So I'm on the floor and I'm looking around, I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to really fight some people today. It's a good thing I'm from Brooklyn, New York, I can do some things. And so I'm just like, okay, we're gonna have to fight it out. But the number one thing was making sure that our elderly members were safe. I didn't care what side of the aisle where they were. It didn't matter to me. We were walking down there was a stairwell that took us off to the corridor they used to evacuate us. That's all I'm going to say about that. And so we're all being filed out. Capitol Police is holding corridors so we can evacuate. I'm walking in there's a stream of us. And I look back over my shoulder and there were, I believe it was 7 women. Some of them had the pin on, so some of them were members, obviously, some didn't or didn't have it out or whatever, I don't know. The natural response is, let me stand aside and make sure that these women get to safety. They were all older than I am. And obviously they don't have my stature, so what are they gonna do if the mob comes in? I think that's a lot more that most people don't really talk about and don't want to get into. But in short, going back, I know I kind of went off on a stream. I do that from time to time. I'll kind of go down a line. But the reality is that those events do not fit that billing. They do not fit it is not okay. Oh, last thing I'll say on that is, everybody likes to say it's the people's house, and it is the people's house. But you don't have the authority to storm it just because you say you pay taxes. Because if you think you have that authority, then everybody has that authority. And if everybody has that authority, that is chaos. That is anarchy. That's not what our republic is based on. That was a good one. What's next?
Can you expound a little bit more on your opinion of the difference between equity and equality?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that back up. So I want to make sure I quote him right. Milton Friedman said, if you have a society that chooses equality over liberty, you'll have little of both. But if you have a society that chooses liberty over equality, you'll have both in great measure. Because the latter, choosing liberty over equality, is actually how you achieve equality. The whole construct of equality is based upon, and I'm gonna just keep it 100% with y'all, is based upon the legitimate and real fact that Black Americans were subjugated to the worst affronts that a people could ever face at any point in the history of the world. And there have been a few sets of people who have dealt with this level of tyranny. The Israelites dealt with that level of tyranny for many times. The Jewish people, obviously under the Third Reich, dealt with that level of cruelty for many, many years. And of course, you know, the Black experience, pre-Reconstruction and even post-Reconstruction with Jim Crow, segregation, etc., here in America. Let's be blunt about what it is. However, the history of what was still does not give, in my view, the right to do the unnatural thing which goes against moral and natural law, which is to extract equity for the sins of the past. The reality is, for the white people who sit in this room, y'all didn't own slaves. I'm not even sure your parent will know. Depending on your age, nope. Your parents didn't own slaves. I'm trying to put the right time context in as I answer. Your parents didn't own slaves. Your grandparents didn't own slaves. Maybe a great did, maybe. I don't know. At what point do we move forward and not just continuously go back to the sins of the past? The second point to that is, as Black people in America today, I would argue to them, and I have many times, that because of the principles of liberty over equality, there is more opportunity and more ability to achieve the ends if you choose to achieve the ends. And what I mean by choose is, again, not all choices are equal. You see, there's a fallacy that everything is equal. That is not true. Life ain't equal. Life ain't fair. You want fair? You know, fair is for elephant ears. That's fair. Life is not fair, period. But what is available in the United States is an opportunity to excel and to achieve. Not every opportunity. You don't get every opportunity. Yeah, some people get more opportunities than others. That's life. But to seek equity means you then have to unwind the opportunities that another person may exist or may have simply because their family is probably in a different standing than yours. That's not right either. My son's 17 years old. I will share a conversation I actually have with him. It's a conversation that my mother shared with me. It kind of goes like this. Son, you're a Black man. You got to work twice as hard. That's just the way it is. Get over it. That's the essence of the conversation. My son has grown up in Naples, Florida. He's had more opportunities than I ever did growing up. And God bless him. I'm happy for him. I'm happy that he is growing up in 2020 America as opposed to 1920 America, when he just would never have had the level of opportunity that he has today. That's just the history. You can't get away from it. But at the same time, it is wrong for me to place a dictate on his, frankly, white students that are his colleagues, his contemporaries, and their families who are my contemporaries because of the history of race in America. What I believe is the better ideal, the higher ideal, is to actually be the more perfect union that everybody loves to talk about when they give speeches. And the way you do that is You have a healthy acknowledgement of the past. You do. But you don't continue to make the same mistakes of the past in order to achieve an equity that, frankly, you can't achieve anyway. And the reason why you can't achieve that, because that goes back to what I talked about earlier. As much as I might design what I think works in my mind, even I can't effectuate that completely in my own life. Does that like speak to anybody? Like, we all have all these great plans in our head about how we're going to do everything, and it doesn't work out. And you know why it doesn't work out? Because we are an interdependent people. I got to deal with you. Listen, I had a great campaign plan. I was going to win by 10 points. Guess what? Won by 774 votes. Why? Voters see what they want to see. They make their own decision. Rival campaigns come out. They spend money. We all attack each other. It's a mess. Is it fair? No. But did I have an opportunity to run? Yes. At the end of the day, that's all you can ask for. So I think the difference between equity and equality is an achievable goal only if you value liberty first. The real distinction between equality and equity is that the people who seek equity don't value liberty. They value the outcome. And they value the outcome above all else. And that's destructive of a free people. That was pretty good. They got to put that on PragerU. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying, hit me up, Prager. You know, I can do these things. I don't know where the
Yes,
microphone
we have a question online. Good morning, Congressman. My name is Brendan McGowan, and I'm the president of Eagles for Liberty. It's a pleasure to co-sponsor this event. What do you personally believe to be the purpose of government, and how do you think your view corresponds with those of Bastiat?
I think the purpose of government is to do as little as possible, but to do the things that people cannot do in their ordinary lives. Let's take trash pickup. Yeah, you probably could take all your trash to the dump, but that probably creates a rubric which is too much of a burden for you individually as a person or your family. So what do? Local governments organize trash pickup. Does it work? Yes. Do you want it to pick it up more than the 1 day a week? Yeah, probably, depending on how much stuff you go through and the size of your family. But it is an organized activity that people could not individually do on their own. And so that's really the purpose of government. It's to really do the things that we can't do for ourselves, like national defense. I mean, yeah, you could be strapped. You can have you a couple 45s and, but you can't get a rocket launcher. Well, don't tell me if you get one. You're not allowed to have one. But anyway, but you cannot, in your own power as an individual, create a national defense for the country. So then what is the actual purpose of government? National defense. You as a person cannot effectuate how people immigrate in and out of the United States. So what is the role of government? To actually create the rubric for that level of immigration of coming and going out of the United States. Why? So that the people who live here, and this is important now, so the people who live here and are citizens of forget America, of the society, have their rights and abilities protected while doing something that we all feel is vital to the interests of the society. And so I think it's really that simple. Government's role is to do those things we cannot effectuate on our own in our own lives. Now, where government goes sideways, in my opinion, is that they try to do a bunch of things that we can do for ourselves in our own lives. But they feel, this goes back to the equity conversation, they feel that it is better for Washington, I'm going to use Washington in this example, to step in and do for us. I'm going to speak on that line. I'm going to speak on mask mandates. I've not been a fan. And I've not been a fan, not because I'm not concerned about COVID-19. I've not been a fan because, in my view, no government body has the authority to tell you what you must put on your face. Just like they can't tell you what you must put on your body, they can't tell you what you must put on your face, even in emergencies. They don't have the legal authority. That is my stance. It will always be my stance. Not because I don't care about COVID-19, not because I don't care about people's health, but because I have a healthy respect for the limits of governmental power. And we must always have a healthy respect for the limits of governmental power. And we can't just say, oh, the government has to do it because, you know, governments are organisms like anything else. Well, that's what Woodrow Wilson wanted, and he got it actually. But they're organisms, and any organism that takes something typically does not give it up. I got to shorten my answers because I know I'm kind of going long. I got to shorten them up. Sorry.
Versus equality, like question that we had come up. You know, we see now in Washington and with policies coming up, we have this equity discussion coming. How do you feel for like this FGCU campus, for example, has its own ideology, of course, and how do you feel about that, about this generation and the future generations kind of having to deal with that as a whole?
Honestly, I'm concerned for current generations and future generations to come, because I think what's happening is that the viewpoint of equity is that it is the high moral standing to achieve. And you know, just to be blunt, we're teaching that in schools all the time these days. And so you have young people who really don't have a concept of, frankly, world history and the interaction and the interdependence of people, and how yes, not perfect, but how most perfect that really is. It is the most perfect. It's not perfect. The reason why it's not perfect is because we're flawed people. All of us. I'm flawed. You're flawed. I don't even know you. I already know you got something going on. Okay? We're all flawed. The mere idea that we can organize perfection is insanity. It flies in the face of what we already know about ourselves as individual people in our own lives, in our own walk. It's a fallacy. So that's why I think the search and the chase for equity is a very flawed endeavor, and it can be a very harmful endeavor. Because again, how are you going to effectuate it? We want equity. How are you going to effectuate it? The only way you can truly effectuate it is with the power of law and the legal enforcement of law. But the legal enforcement of law doesn't create anything. It denudes, it controls, it contains. And if government has the authority to contain, then government has the authority to grow, and you don't have the authority to grow. And that is a complete antithesis of the ideal of the American founding. And frankly, not just the American founding, but the founding of the beginning and the desires of every liberty movement in world history. The desires of every liberty movement with respect to governmental power in world history was to actually limit the power of the executive and to limit the power of the government, not to limit the power of the people. That's what they rebelled against in 1215. That's why when I had these discussions, I don't get caught up in Joe Biden's executive orders. I could argue against them, but there has to be a philosophical and a moral underpinning for the basis of my argument. And the basis of my argument never starts with America. America is the latest in the line of countries seeking liberty. We're not the first. Oh, that's my buzzer to stop. That's a good place to stop right there. There we go. No, but we're not the first. So I think to the point, I am concerned for future generations because I think that they are being taught and packaged a false notion that with their activism, with their talk, with their support, with their willingness to give up of their own liberties, they can achieve equity. The truth is, it's never can be achieved. That they could achieve it, they would have achieved it in Mao's China, or they would have achieved it in Stalin's Russia. And actually what happened there was some of the greatest massacres in world history, which actually don't get taught enough in our schools.
Hello, Congressman. My name is Alex, and out of curiosity, I'd like to know, during your time in the private sector, the state legislature, and even in your first month in Washington, D.C., do you feel that there were people around you that are there because of some form of nepotism, i.e. who they know, and not because of their merit, which I see as very much an antithesis of American foundations?
The short answer is yes. Happens all the time. Like I said, life's not fair. It's just not. Listen, I've worked in companies where, yeah, the children of the owner of the company got a leg up over everybody else. Where everybody else had to cut their teeth. The owner's kids just got stuff given to them. That's the way it is. What I always tell my sons is that every job I've had, except for my first job, it wasn't what I know, it's who I know. So I know they teaching you in college networking, and in college you're like, networking, I don't even know how to do that. What the heck does that even mean? Honestly, here's what I learned what networking is. Just go talk to people, keep their contact, and keep in touch. Let's make it networking. Sounds so amazing. Talk to people, get their contact, keep in touch. Hey, can I pick your brain? I don't know what I'm gonna do in my life. Can I pick your brain and talk to you? Because what you find in that relationship is that when people who have achieved see a young person who wants to achieve, we actually desire to help that person. It's like an innate thing in human beings. We'll be like, man, you know what? Man, she's trying to really get somewhere. You know what? I know I got this position, you know, let's bring her in and talk to her. That's how this thing works. It always works this way. I was with about 3 years ago, there's a nonprofit in Fort Myers called Pick Up the Ball. Former supporter of mine, still a supporter of mine, left his career to start it. It's a nonprofit in Fort Myers, really to mentor young Black basketball players in Dunbar. Awesome group. I'm telling you the same thing I told them, same exact thing. Yeah, people are going to have an advantage on you in life. What am I supposed to actually do about that? I can't change that. And the reason why I can't change it is because I don't know the nature of their relationship. The nature of their relationship is different than the nature of my relationship with them. I can't work my way around it. I can't change that. The only thing I can do is develop my own relationships. This is the networking piece to try to achieve that. But is there nepotism? Oh yeah, all the time. It happens a lot in politics. This is where the child of the previous elected official runs and they got the name. So people just know the name and they go in and do it. Yeah, it happens. Somebody asked me like, so then when your sons run, and I'm like, no, they should not do that. And they're like, why? And I'm like, I'm not doing this to create a kingdom. I think everybody's trying to create a kingdom in their own lives, you know, like dynasty, you know. My wife and I have this thing, it's called Donald's Dynasty, but that's like a personal thing, it's internal. But that's because when we were growing up as kids from like, you know, broken homes and broken families, we just wanted to create a family dynamic, a family structure where we had something we could pass on to our kids, where our kids' success is based in part on their work ethic, but also on the abilities and the opportunities and the doors we could open up for them. That's just what parents do sometimes, not all the time. Not all parents do it. I know that. But I think the thing to be careful is that, yes, nepotism exists. People are going to have unfair advantages. People start out at different points in life. There are some kids who can't run, but they start off, you know, 2 meters from the finish line and they can't even run. You know, they're at meter 98. I'm at meter 0 and I got to catch. And I probably won't catch them. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to pull that person back to meter 0 with me, because it goes back to their point. If somebody has the authority to do that, they have the authority to do anything. And that's not an ideal I would ever want to see adopted in the United States. Back online? There we go.
Yes. How can someone like yourself speak on high ethical standards while at the same time refusing the end results of a democratic presidential election with no legal evidence of fraud?
Oh, that's a great question. We're talking about the Electoral College. All right. So let's talk quickly about the Electoral College. So when I went through and was doing my research on what I was going to do about voting on Electoral College votes, what I found were that in 4 states, and Arizona was the 5th state actually, where the actual laws governing elections passed by state legislatures were violated. Here's the thing that I think gets lost in this whole discussion. I don't get into Dominion voting machines, and I don't get into that stuff. If you look at, I'm gonna take the state of Pennsylvania for a moment. Pennsylvania, actually no, let me back up. The United States Constitution says that election laws are passed by the state legislatures in those states. I was in the state legislature in Florida. Florida election law is passed by the legislature. It is not created by the Secretary of State. It is not created by local supervisors of elections. It is created by the legislature. If a court or an executive level position like a Secretary of State or supervisor of election makes a unilateral adjustment in the procedures of election law, is that violating the law? Yes or no? Like, it gets really this simple. Is it a violation of law? In my view, it is. And so the secondary question is, did the violation of law create the dynamics upon which can be contention in the vote outcomes in some of these states? In my opinion, yes. Let's take Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, in Dane County and Milwaukee County, two things occurred. Number one, the supervisor of elections in both counties ignored signature verifications on their absentee ballots. They did all absentee mail-out voting, and they expanded the opportunities for ballots to be received, and they used COVID-19 as the reason for doing it. But Wisconsin law does not allow for the provisions of what happened in Dane County and Milwaukee County. So are we going to be a nation of laws, or are we not going to be? It's easy to say, well, COVID-19, but what we have to remember is the nation had already been dealing with COVID-19 for 7 months before the November elections. We kind of already figured out what was happening and what was not. It wasn't like COVID happened to us in September of the election year. That is not true. So when I looked at challenging states, it was on those lines. In my view, if you violate election law, there is a major question upon which those votes have been tallied and counted. And so that was the purpose of my objection in Arizona and in Pennsylvania. We did not challenge Wisconsin. But the purpose of my vote to challenge those votes is because election laws were violated. They were broken. The cute thing in media is to say, well, oh, but the Secretary of State said it was okay. The Secretary of State does not make election law. The Secretary of State executes the will of the legislature when it comes to elections. That's their job. And I think, again, this, in some respects, this delves into this equity argument. Because if you take COVID-19 as the precipice to say we still want to effectuate all people voting, but don't go through it with legal means, you create a disjointed process of processing, receiving, and counting ballots. If you do that, and if you allow it, and you never challenge it, what you're asking for is more of the same in the future. Except then in the future, there won't be COVID-19 to use as your excuse. The excuse will then be, oh, well, we did it in 2020, so it's okay. No, it's not okay. It's a very hard stance to have. I know a lot of people don't really understand it, but if you're going to be a respecter of the rule of law, it is the proper stance to have. I will also add to that point that the Electoral College has been challenged in the last, well, not in 2016, it was challenged in 2005 and 2001. Anybody remember what was challenged in 2001? Florida. It was challenged by the Democrats. They challenged the Electoral College votes. In 2005, there was 83 Democrats did not vote to accept Ohio in 2005. Nobody likes to talk about those things. So even when I was making a decision about doing it, I went and looked back at the history. Oh, well, there have been people who have voted against or not voted for them at all. Okay. So the precedent in Congress has existed for quite some time. It's just that obviously in the 2020 cycle, it's the thing. I hope that answers the person's question. Sure.
Hi, I'm also a believer in the primacy of individual liberty and a big supporter for a lot of the things that you're up here talking about today. And I voted for you, by the way, so I appreciate what you're doing. I'm curious, in your term as representative, what kinds of things that you see either amongst your peers in the legislature or elsewhere in trends throughout the country that you think are immediate, kind of near term within the next couple of years, threats to some of these individual liberties that we all value?
I got a gamut on that question. Threats to liberty that I've seen my time in the legislature and even now in Congress. The biggest one is HR 1 that Nancy Pelosi is pushing. This is a legislation that would federalize elections. You do not want the federal government being involved in elections. And I think even as a Republican, we have to be careful on our side because we want to quote unquote fix the process that we don't do the same. I've been having those conversations internally with my Republican colleagues. Like, guys, I want to fix it too, but that is not the proper approach. After the Parkland shooting that happened a few years ago, red flag laws was one of those things. That's why I voted against it when I was in the legislature. And I had to go against my party, but it was the right vote in my opinion. Because what red flag laws did, in spite of the carnage at what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, red flag laws actually took away due process rights of gun owners. And due process rights is not to protect gun owners. Due process rights is to protect all of us. Because if you can erode due process rights for gun owners, then who can't you erode due process rights for? And I think that's the premise and the premise upon which I make that argument. Some of the other ones I'm very concerned about. I'll be honest with you, is DACA policy. DACA is unconstitutional. Barack Obama created it. Donald Trump tried to modify it, and the court told him, no, you can't modify it, which I found to be so crazy because the court knows that DACA never came before the legislature, was never created before the legislature. And now you have a situation where, President Biden's now going through the process of ginning DACA back up. I think the fact that the president has signed now 42 executive orders, the most by far in history. I believe he's probably signed more executive orders than any president since 1900 combined. That's how many executive actions he's signed. It's a very dangerous precedent that we're setting because I think what's happening is, it's a very dangerous precedent because what's happening in our politics, and as Republicans, we have to be careful. As a Republican, I'm going to say, I have to be careful of this as well, and my colleagues do. We are getting so caught up in winning and wanting to win that we are justifying the destruction of the actual powers of the legislative branch. Because now the mode will be, well, when we get back into power, we're going to unwind all these things that Joe Biden did, means we are then going to empower our own king to use a pen and a phone, to wield justice for the right. I think it's a very, very dangerous line we're going down. I think something as simple as the fact that the House has not passed a real budget in 10 years in the United States, a budget, like spending your money. What we do now is basically the Speaker of the House and the Senate President get together with their staff and they create a continuing resolution. And the continuing resolution just drops on members' desks like mine a day before we're supposed to vote on it. And how can I actually represent the interests of my districts in the spending, in the money that is being spent, that is their money? And I will add, not just their money, it is the tax money of future children who don't even have a job yet, that we're borrowing their money to spend today, and we're not even actually going through a legitimate budgetary process to justify the spending. Like, these are all I can go on, there's so much. These are the things that are very concerning to me about the future of the Republic. Last thing I will add is dealing with Social Security and Medicare. Politicians don't like talking about Social Security and Medicare because, you don't want to lose elections, and it's considered the third rail of politics. I was on a call last week. The insolvency for Social Security and Medicare happens in 4 years. 4. The programs go insolvent. We have a responsibility to right the ship, to protect the people on them now, and to protect future citizens, and also to protect those same young people who don't even have jobs. Some of y'all are sitting in this room. Hurry up and get a job. We need your tax money. Thank you. But we are literally spending your future earnings today. So what's going to be left for you? Yeah, I got a lot. I got like a laundry list of things. Listen, guys, honestly, thanks so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. This was cool. I got to come back. Next time I won't give an opening speech. We'll just get to questions. But I really do appreciate your time. Thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for having these conversations. They are critically important to the future of our country. And I just want to thank you all for being here. See you.
All right, well, let's give another round of applause to our 5th annual Distinguished Speaker in Ethics. Normally, I would be able to invite folks up to have conversation, autograph, or photo, which we did the previous 4 years, but our current circumstances don't allow me to offer that invitation. Also, we do have just a box lunch and a drink over there for you, so please make that available to you on your way out the door and eat that in a socially distanced manner. And we are dismissed for today, and thank you for being here.